So I do have this boot on. I hope it's not distracting. I feel great shame. I was going to tell this wonderful story about how I was driving the lane and everyone crashed the boards and I had to dunk over 3 people and landed on an ankle. But I was playing pickleball, and that's what really happened. So when I met, let me see if I can get here. There we go. I don't want to see that. I want to see that. I met Seishu at an event that I was hosting. I did these conference workshops where I would travel around the country and land in a city and do a few days of training. And then at the end of it, I'd have an optional time where people could join in a conversation on faith. And in my world, this was photography. So it was all these photographers from around the planet gathering in these cities. And over the course of a number of years, we would have several of these conversations where people could come and, again, optionally, have a cup of coffee and talk out loud about this area of their life, whatever that was, and what that meant in their life. And in this particular case, over the course of 2 years, we heard from everybody. We had agnostics, atheists, Wiccan, nuns before there were nuns. Like, there were so many clever categories of people. But my friend Seishu, by this is kind of fun. I'm kind of, just wait for it. Seishu was a Hindu. And we were going around, I was kind of the moderator, and we were going around, and I said, Seishu, tell me about your faith tradition. He says, well, I'm a Hindu. And I said, well, that's fascinating. What is it about being Hindu? Like, why are you a Hindu? What does that mean to you? And he says, well, I have these amazing parents. Amazing. They love me so much. They were so incredible. And they're Hindu. So I'm Hindu. If they were Catholic, guess what? I'd be Catholic. That's why. And I'm like, logic holds for me. Makes sense. Went on to the next person. We'll call him Frank. His name is not Frank because I'm about to make fun of Frank. And I said, Frank, what's your faith tradition? And he says, I'm a Christian. I said, well, what does that mean to you, Frank? And he says, man, I just believe what comes around goes around, and energy and what you do in this life matters in the next. And all of a sudden, Seishu goes, Frank, I think you're a Hindu. And there was just something about like keeping it real that was going on in the conversation. And my hope is in the few minutes that we're together, I can help. Let's be real here today. Are you with me? By the way, I'm radically insecure, so if you're not with me, then I'm gonna have a lot of problems. So I already have a problem, so if you wouldn't mind joining in the conversation, that would be resourceful. So to get started, what I wanted to do was quote a modern day philosopher, somebody who's, you know this guy actually, he's incredibly well known, very practically minded, and of course, you all know, you're anticipating it, it's the philosopher Ferris Bueller, who once said, life moves pretty quick. If you don't stop to look around once in a while, you could miss it. See, you read Bueller like me. And what I want to start with is, because I think this is actually pretty brilliant, if you slow down in these fast times, what will you notice? What will you discover? And here's one of the things that I think you'll discover straight away, and I think this is true of you.
Some people like to climb mountains. I like to build planes in the air.
I grew up wanting to be on a wing, wanting to be up this high.
Sometimes the temperature up at altitude will reach 60 below. It's brisk, it's refreshing.
You never know what you're going to come across up here. Canadian geese, mallards,
Owls.
These people back here, that's why I come to work. That's why I build airplanes in the sky.
We're not just building a plane here. We're building a dream.
I love this job.
I get a lot of thanks up here. When I look over there and I see that little kid, I look in his eyes, that's all the thanks I need.
So these entrepreneurs, these folks that are going to come out here and pitch, this is what they're doing. They're building airplanes in the sky. It's a ridiculous, like no one pays you to do this. You just come up with this idea, you launch, you're midair, and you're bolting things to it. I'm seeing some nods in the room where you guys understand that challenge. But there's a problem in this, and it was alluded to a little bit earlier, that this idea of an entrepreneurial life has implications. It's lonely. But we live in a particular moment in history where it's not just lonely because it's entrepreneurial. Because we're so digitized, we are actually in a particular moment that makes it radically more lonely, like 10x lonely. And I want to put this in context. Some of you guys may have heard of a guy named Andy Crouch. And Andy used to work at Christianity Today, and now he works with this place called Praxis Labs. And he made some profound observations around 3 particular revolutions that have happened in history. The first one was the wealth revolution. This is when we moved from trading land to trading money, where money started representing things like land, and it was extraordinarily powerful. A lot of good things came out of that. And then the next revolution was the Industrial Revolution, or the work revolution. And this is where we stopped using our bodies to do things and started using machines to do these things. And we gained tremendous power and tremendous wealth. Well, friends, we are in a third revolution right now. This is, again, Andy's observations. But we are in a kind of knowledge revolution, where we used to go after wisdom, but now we're trading that in for data. And if you don't believe me, if any of you have kids in the room, when was the last time they said, Mom or Dad, what do you think of this? They didn't. They said, what does Google think? They asked Siri. There was some other trade that they went for to get their insight in the moment they were in. And of course, we do it too. And with it has come, this moment has yielded against so much power, so much wealth, yet at the same time, we've lost something. And that trade to get that power is not insignificant. In fact, this is the way Andy put it. He says, modernity, I keep pressing the wrong button, forgive me. He says, modernity is a great place for power, but it's an awful place for personhood. And think of it. Picture the last time you've been in a Starbucks and you saw a number of people in the room, or maybe just in the atrium. Me plus Starbucks plus laptop plus AirPods equals my life. I'm plugged in, like to the Oasis kind of thing. And it's really striking how lonely that can be. And that's not just because of what we're doing. Josh Muccio, my friend who runs a podcast called The Pitch on Gimlet, when we were talking recently about this, we were talking about loneliness. And he says, I feel like loneliness could become the great problem of our age. If you don't know The Pitch, by the way, it's basically Shark Tank on the radio. It's fantastic. You should check it out. But he's right. The moment we're in has had profound implications. And if you take that and you amplify it even further, our best research suggests that there's 53 million freelancers in the United States. That's just the freelancers. That's not counting the small business owners. That's not counting all the startups. Like, there's some overlap. But take all of those Starbucks and all of those laptops and all of those AirPods and multiply it by tens of millions, and we have a loneliness epidemic. And if we don't account for it, we're going to be in trouble. And what's really interesting is this dilemma is largely invisible because we're gaining so much power. You can go anywhere, anytime, and take ground with your project, but at the same time, you can be really stuck, like really lost in something that you don't quite know how to put words to. And it's unfortunate because when it comes to business, we can see it obviously. Like my friend Tamara, she tells this great story about her lemonade stand. And her lemonade stand, she did as a kid, she thought, I have this great innovation. I'm going to be startup-centric around my lemonade stand. And instead of when she was 6 years old, instead of just stirring the Crystal Light and serving it on the corner, she thought she would go door to door and start a delivery service with her lemonade. I mean, pretty clever, right? But the problem was, if people wanted to stir their own Crystal Light, they would have. It got really irritating. Her dad got nervous. All of a sudden, it was invasive in people's homes, and she got immediate feedback that things weren't going her way. Simon Sinek likes to say, start with why, but when it comes to business, it's all the W's. It's the why, the when, the how, the who. When we have gaps in any of those areas in our business, it's obvious. It's immediately evident. Like, here's another example. Let me just go back just a smidge. So this is the cutting-edge hair salon in my neighborhood. No lie, my wife and I were out on a walk about 2 years ago. We saw this. And no kidding, friends, I did not make this up. Right next door was this. Like, that's real. Like when there's a gap, we see it. It's obvious. But when there's gaps for us as humans, it's less obvious. The gaps are real. Now, I know there are investors in the room, and you guys are going to be listening on these pitches, and there's going to be 3 things at least that you're looking for. 1, are the projects up here interesting? And number 2, you're going to be asking, are the people up here who are presenting aware of the gaps that they obviously will have if they're in the startup phase? And if they're aware of it as an investor, you're actually a little bit okay with it. You get nervous when they're not aware, when they're clueless of their gaps. And if they can identify what is their gap and what their plan is, and it's an interesting project, you might get behind it. But with humans, it's not so easy. Where do we see the gaps? We can see it when people blow their life up, but in the middle of these moments where they're radically lonely, the gaps are less visible. Unless people are smart enough to build feedback loops into their game, into their life. Henry Cloud suggests that at the end, as leaders, you're always going to get a combination of two things: what you create and what you allow. And the folks that are going to come up here and share, they have some extraordinary things that they've created that are out here. But whether it's them or you, what are you allowing in your life? And how, in this particular age, are you building structures around your life so that you can call out those things, to build in overt feedback loops? How are you accounting for your long-term viability in a lonely world? If we were going to review very quickly, Ferris Bueller is encouraging us to stop and look around. Andy Crouch is saying that the more power we have in this time in history, the more personhood we need. And Henry Cloud says our value is a combination of what we create and what we allow. So how do we increase our focus as Jesus followers and entrepreneurially minded people? How do you invite feedback into your gaps? Consider the rich young ruler. If you're unfamiliar with this guy, he's a guy in the Bible where this guy Jesus comes along and they have a conversation. He's done everything right, apparently, on the outside. But Jesus points out one specific thing. He says, well, if you really want this kingdom that I have to offer, just sell everything and follow me. And he pauses. And he realizes that it comes at a cost to give up all that power that he has to go and do that. And he thinks that he's losing. When in reality, there is this massive opening. He was getting feedback that he had this gap, but he didn't want to hear it. Because our default setting is to not want to hear it. It's scary, it's painful. I don't want the feedback loop. But of course, it was a sucker bet. Jesus was offering him the deal of a lifetime. Now, there's good news in all this. For many of you in the room, you're neither young, rich, or ruling anything. So good news. There's something here for you. If you understand the unique moment we're in, if you're convicted at all, if you have a sense that there's something to the moment we're in that is not normal. This isn't just a moment. This is a revolution in history. And if we're going to account for those things, how are we intentionally understanding those challenges, actively soliciting feedback, and looking for ways to see the gaps in our lives? And for those of you who maybe are richer and young-ish and ruling something, it's not too late for you either. You know, when you build this kind of living in reality into your life in advance of the blowout situation, good things happen. It's far more painful to have these come later. You see, reality is our best friend. Reality is always good news. Even if you find out you have chemotherapy, or you need chemotherapy because you have cancer, that's good news because it's real. You can do something about it. But if you don't know about it, you can't do anything about it. So how are you building feedback loops into your life? How are you intentionally surrounding yourself with people who are telling you the truth about what is actually so in your world, what they're seeing? I'm going to suggest to you that there are 3 simple things to consider that you could practically do in the days to come. The first one's pretty fun. For me, I call it my to-be list. Not my to-do list. We have far too many to-do lists. But a to-be list is simply a 24-hour list. It's a ritual. It's a set of habits that I go through every single day. And if I hit my 13 things on my list, notice my workout is not checked because I am not working out today. But everything on my list, if I do these things, these open up for me a life, an awareness, an awakeness that is uncommon when I live my life plugged in. And whatever I want to be, I get to check to say, am I in tune with my life on a 24-hour basis? And if I don't get it done, no problem. It's just feedback. Like I said I wanted that, but I didn't get that. And I get to reset it again and again and track my trends. So these kinds of rituals can be helpful. The second is to actively expose your gaps, to surround yourself with people. And some of you might go, I don't know how to do that. And I actually wrote a little guide to help you do it. So if it's resourceful, and only if it is, I'd encourage you to text the word Fastermind to that number. And the reason I'm suggesting it is it's meant to just be a simple, like 10-page little PDF, just a guide to say if I wanted to build a group of people that felt safe, that I could have a conversation with, how would you filter for who those people are, and what would be the rules of engagement? It's just a very simple guide. If it's helpful, it's free. Go ahead and grab it. But I don't care if you get my guide. I just care that you get a guide, that you take the time and build this into your life. And then the third thing I'll just say is this, and it's a quick story. The time is now, my friends. This is a picture of my dad and I and my two brothers. It's the only picture that exists with my dad and I in the same frame. He died a week later. If you're curious who his favorite son is, he's looking at his favorite right now. Yes, I am the naked one on the far right. And he loved me. But what was tragic, of course, was he died when I was almost 3. Later on in life, I found out that not only did my dad die when I was 3, but my dad's dad died when my dad was 3. I was entering into a legacy of death. Now, good news, I have 4 children, and my youngest is 12. So I made it. The curse is over. It's all done. There's redemption available. But I got to tell you, this reality that time is short, that every day the stakes are high, if we aren't conscious to that, it's tempting to be lulled to sleep in this digital moment. But how do we wake ourselves up? And how do we take action where we can redeem stories, where we can change the story? This is a fun little picture we made as an alternative to the last one. I get to be that dad. I get to reinvent. And some of you, it might be time to do something similar. If the stakes have never been higher, and this is the moment, way beyond just the pitch, just for you in this seat, I wonder if just a couple of you are asking yourself the question, what do I need to do next? What have I been waiting on? What is that thing that's been nudging that if I don't pay attention to it soon, it's going to have me more than I'm going to have it? And my invitation for you today is to consider that out loud with another human being. It's been an absolute privilege to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much. Can't wait for these pitches. What a pleasure. Thank you.